Well, as a lifelong learner and an academic, somebody who's taken lots of courses and taught lots of courses, the most fascinating thing to me about AI is the access to all of the knowledge of the human race at my fingertips, right? It makes it so easy. You know, as society, we started by putting everything that we know kind of gradually over time on the internet. It all exists in that internet space, but now we have a really efficient system to go in there and sift through that information upon a very specific request and find exactly what we're looking for within seconds and generate answers to pretty much any question. So as somebody who likes information, as somebody who loves to learn and has lots of questions about everything at all times, to me, this is absolutely, you know, it will become indispensable. We're still getting used to it. You know, we're still in the phase of like, oh my God, this is happening. But I think as we get used to having tools like ChatGPT, it's going to become like, you know, how did I live without texting before? How did I live without my phone? How did I live without having every possible question that comes to mind answered at any point during the day? So yeah, like think back on the times when we had these huge libraries and you had to physically go there and sift through huge volumes of encyclopedias just to find a tiny little piece of relevant information. Instead of that, now we can just take our device that most of us have on us at all times, type in any question that we can think of, and get immediately the access to the information of the entire human race. So in the world of academia specifically, this is obviously quite relevant because students have lots of things that they need to know, that they need to learn, and we can't teach them all of these things. We see the workforce evolving. We see employers looking for slightly different skills these days. They're less interested in people who have memorized information. They're more interested in people who are able to find the answers to the questions that they want. And being able to use these tools is extremely important. Being able to develop the correct prompts is extremely important. So over time, our academic perspective is starting to shift as well, a little bit towards the end of encouraging students to find their own information. So that's obviously that's a huge benefit. On the other hand, of course, there are drawbacks. I don't know. Do we want to talk about that a little bit later on, Leo?
Yeah, that'd be great. Maybe I'll move on to Anu. If you could talk to from the marketing side of things, that would be wonderful.
For sure. So AI has been very helpful for marketing departments because content creation is one of our key pillars. So we know with the advent of a lot of these generative AI tools, we have at our hand tools to help us generate content like blogs, headlines, Google AdWords, and it just reduces the amount of time it takes to build some of the basic blocks that we need for the content. And we can talk about some of the downsides later on in the presentation. But certainly, since I've started in the marketing industry, generative AI has really made my job a lot easier when it comes to content creation. Some of the things that would take me hours and sometimes days to get started, it now can be a few minutes. And at least now I've got a starting point to build the piece that I want. But beyond content creation, AI has helped marketers deliver customized customer experience. So a lot of the product recommendations and promotions are really enabled by AI because it's able to look at patterns and then suggest what kind of product the buyer is most likely going to be interested in and engage with. Also, if you look at virtual chatbots, a lot of those are being generated by AI. And so it eliminates the need for me as a marketer to sit and code in some of the responses or some of the questions. It does some of the work for me. Another way that AI has really helped with marketing is looking at how the marketing spend. So it can analyze millions of data points and then determine which content messages are most likely going to drive conversions. And it looks across different channels like social media and email. So it allows me to optimize where my limited marketing dollars are going to be used. As I look ahead, they're talking about AI again being used in a number of areas, and the ones that I'm excited to see is, what does AI designed websites is going to look like? As we know, what websites are a highly creative process that take a lot of time, and you want to build this sort of unique experience for each company. So they're looking at how AI can be used in the design and creation process.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see. Thank you. Tanya, what would you say the benefits are from a corporate learning perspective?
So on the corporate learning side, from a content perspective, its real sweet spot is in some of the mundane tasks that we have to do. So just like any other industry, there are certain processes that instructional designers and technical writers follow in order to accomplish their end product, which is training or documentation, depending. So from that perspective, what it really helps to do is take out some of those mundane things. It's almost like, in my day-to-day, when I'm working, particularly on professional services with our customers, I'm developing that content, and I've been using our tool, Leah. And what it's really helping me do is go faster in the things that I would do before, some of those repetitive tasks. So things like generating test questions. Those are things that AI is really good at because it can take the content that's there and generate the questions for it quickly. It can give a lot of suggestions. So sometimes you get sort of that writer's block or unsure, what's the best way to demonstrate these 3 topics that I just looked at. It's really good at saying, okay, so given those 3 things, it kind of synthesizes that information and says, here's some suggestions of things that you could do for a demonstration. The other thing that it's really great at doing is, from my perspective, it's that acceleration. So in the field of corporate learning, our most prevalent problem is always speed. Whenever it's product training or if it's soft skills, whatever it happens to be, there needs to be typically quite a bit of content to build out real good, robust programs that generate behavioral results and changes, which is typically what we want in corporate training. And in order to be able to do that, like if we look at a vertical like high tech. So in high tech, especially given the really rapid development cycles that we have now, products are evolving so quickly. Most people are doing sprints that are, 2 weeks to a month in length, and the product is getting updated all the time. If I have a really long development cycle on the learning content that I'm creating, our product is probably 3 or 4 versions away by the time I'm ready to release the training from that original version of the product. So by the time it comes out, I'm already out of date. And so this really is allowing us to keep up with the rapid pace that learning needs to come out as. So it helps you do things like update really quickly. I can see, look across a lot of content really quickly and identify areas where I have similarities and make updates really fast. It's just those mundane things that help you go a lot faster to be able to achieve your goals and get that learning to your audience more quickly. So those would be the main things from a corporate learning perspective that are really helpful. On the styling side, because there's kind of 2 elements when you're developing corporate learning. There's the content itself, which is really helpful with generative AI, but one that doesn't get talked about quite as much, which also is really, helpful, is they're introducing little tools into our existing, like Office suite that already are helping me, go a lot faster. Things like recommending designs for your slides. So something that, as a designer of learning, you're maybe spending a lot of time looking at style, whereas now I don't necessarily have to also have a graphic designer or be a graphic designer. I can have the AI make suggestions on what looks nice where and give me some options and be able to choose it and go forward. So it's kind of two areas that I'm really seeing AI help in the corporate learning. And I would say the most valuable piece is that acceleration so that we can keep up with the pace that solutions and products are evolving at, which is very rapid. And traditional processes, in case there's those of you who aren't from my industry, the traditional process is quite long to develop training. So it's not just like producing some slides. It's really quite a formal process that typically takes, a good amount of time to complete.
Great. And Clayton, from your perspective in the engineering world and software development, what would you say the benefits would be?
Interestingly, it reflects a lot of what Tanya said, that it ends up being a thing of acceleration. That a lot of the mundane tasks of writing code, writing tests, even coming up with some of the documentation, or those can get done almost instantaneously. And then you just need to have the human there to fix up the misunderstandings, to clear up some of the problems that come out of it. But it's very fast. The other thing is it's an expert on obscure programming things and how X connects to Y under this circumstance. And so as a place to get started, as a place to ask it questions and really dialogue with it as I would a programmer, it's very useful. I've been able to use it to discuss the pros and cons of two approaches. For example, on one project I was looking at, do I store it this way? Do I store it this way? And GPT ends up being a place you can talk back to it and discuss it and say, okay, but this is my need, and why would you say that? And it sort of can list the pros and cons. It tends to want to come up with balanced answers. It's one of its strengths and or weaknesses is that it always wants to see both sides of things. Certainly I found it helpful for diagnosing bizarre errors, asking it, why did I get this? And it will take its best stab at it. Some of the most exciting stuff is, in many ways, it's a knowledgeable, tireless, fast junior programmer who has a slight overconfidence problem. I mean, like many of them I've worked with, but it really is now at the level of being an assistant and someone who can, I say someone, a thing that can collaborate with you and help write brand new code that has not been written before.